Here we go. Here we go. Introductions, and then ZeroTouch. ZeroTouch is the only way. But as always, before we get to our topic, I want to talk about some news. And before I forget, I do want to mention Apple has a pretty cool May the 4th be with you webpage today. They have a film about the audio content of Star Wars. I have not watched the film. I just saw it this morning. I mean, I saw the promo. It's 16 minutes. Haven't had 16 minutes to look at it yet, but I am interested in that. Have you seen it, Ross?
No, too busy putting out fires.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. So the one thing I want to touch on, which just sounds like a broken record, because we talk about it every month, but it's broken updates. And why do I mention this? Partly because I feel like Apple is throwing us under the bus, so to speak, when they throw up a message, when people are trying to update their Mac, they throw up a message in some cases that says, you cannot do this, please contact your administrator. Of course, it's natural for clients to think we are the administrator and we're prohibiting them from updating their Mac, even though we've just asked them or told them to update their Mac. And what we've discovered is, and we've mentioned this before, the update mechanism is often broken. Ross, did this happen with Monterey, or does it affect earlier operating systems?
Oh yeah, this has been a thing since Big Sur. It's become much more common in the last couple months. We've seen a lot more of this symptom. And it pretty much just means that there's something we affectionately call the software update binary. It hangs out on your Mac, and it's responsible for talking to Apple servers and figuring out if there's a patch available for you. And for whatever reason, boy howdy, has it been unstable for quite a bit of time. When that happens, it takes a look. It cannot finish, that communication with Apple server, and then either just remains saying like, I'm checking for updates with little spinning gear, stays there indefinitely, or it'll just error out after it times out and say, oh, I'm sorry, you're on this OS, and that's the highest that your administrator will allow you to go to.
Yeah.
And we don't bar that at the moment. If your organization has a need to, please let us know and we'll discuss it, but that's not something we currently do.
Yeah, in fact, we have a little thing called Nudge, which, let me pull that up here. Nudge is, as the name implies, nudging users on Macs to apply updates, specifically updates that require restarts. And that's why I listed these up here, because this year alone, January, February, 2 in March, we got a break in April. We're going to see another one coming out in this month, most likely 12.4. Is that right, Ross?
Yeah, it's in the later beta stages, so we're expecting that to drop probably in the next couple of weeks.
And these are security updates, and these security updates require the Mac to be restarted. And some of these restarts are not trivial. It's not like, hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes. It's like, I will be back sometimes in 20 minutes applying these restarts. Have you seen that, Ross, or is it just my older Mac that takes 20 minutes?
No, it's not uncommon. Especially, generally speaking, we always say that the 0.3 is sort of like the middle update of an upgrading system. So that one from March 14th, that was a pretty substantial update. That wasn't just security fixes. That was actually, a couple new features, some more major bug fixes. And so when you're running one of these bad boys, you can sometimes expect it to take, 15, 20 minutes. That is not uncommon at all.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing a situation where we're experiencing more updates more rapidly than usual. They all require restarts. We're encouraging people to restart. And in fact, we recently switched from what's called detailed mode to simple mode to encourage people to restart. We're trying a bit of an experiment. We kept adding more information to try to communicate why this is so important. And I think we reached a tipping point whereby nobody reads any of this. So we're going to try to go the opposite way. And this is all it says. Your device requires a security update. Days remaining to update. You can defer it only so many times. Please update your device. And these are all related. The problem is when we tell people to do this, because the update process is broken, people are getting rightfully frustrated and confused. So fortunately, we did build a fix. It's just getting the word out about the fix. So if you go to support menu and launch Mac Manage and search for update, there is software update kickstart process. And if you run that, it will 9 times out of 10, or maybe 10 out of 10, Ross, you tell me, fix the problem right away.
Yeah, it's pretty darn reliable. It's a really lightweight script. Just takes a second to run. It just ostensibly just closes and reopens the software update binary, and then you'll need to quit and reopen system preferences if it's already open. The script will try to do that for you, but there are certain situations where it can't, like if you're in the middle of changing a password or changing some more advanced settings, where it knows that the app can't cleanly close, that it can't cleanly exit. It's going to opt on the side of not doing something that might annoy you. And so your full workflow is generally run the kickstart, open up system preferences, run your update. More often than not, they'll just take care of it, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, the other message I've seen is your Mac is up to date, even though it's not. Now, we know 12.3.1 is up to date, but I've seen people with 12.2.1, and it says your Mac is up to date. So there are a couple different scenarios where you get the nudge prompt to update, but then it doesn't look like you can. That's where you got to run this. As always, reach out to us. We'll remind you, walk you through this, but super frustrating. And this is in the Mac admins community, something that people are, all aware of and obviously frustrated about. I think we've talked that to death. Ross, anything else you want to add before I move on?
No, that pretty much covers it. Best of luck.
Okay.
Does work most of the time, and just like Ben said, give us a holler if you have any questions.
I do like this little shortcut. Obviously, I can go to system preferences and I can go to software update and get here, but I can also just go to support menu and click on the OS, and it takes me right there. And if there was an update, there would be a little red reminder that an update exists, a little red. I don't know if it's a number.
They call them badges.
Badges, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, also in the news, I want to mention M1 Macs are selling like hotcakes. In the research from Global PC, okay, no, let me just read this. New research claims that global PC shipments were down 4.3% in Q1 of 2022 compared to the same period of last year, but MacBook sales were up 8%. And this Apple is attributing to the M1 chip, the power of the M1 chip, the efficiency of the M1 chip. This is a very popular and very affordable machine. So if you haven't yet looked at getting a new Mac, especially if you're running anything 4 years and older, I would definitely consider trading in that Mac, getting some money back and using it toward a new M1. And that also bodes well for Apple in business, as we see Apple in business continue to rise. We talked about employee choice programs last month, and now that's very popular to attract and retain employees. So if you're not doing that, it's a good idea. And it's not just me saying that. I want to touch on some changes that we've made at Ntiva as of May 1st, mostly with the Apple team and our legacy Forget Computers clients. But this affects all of us here. We use Zendesk for, I don't know, it was well over 10 years, Ross, I think. So
yeah, it was from before I got here.
Yeah, and FreshBooks, we use FreshBooks even longer for billing, and that has now been consolidated and migrated to the Ntiva standard, which is called ConnectWise. Not that anyone needs to know that, but these are behind the scenes changes we're making to improve our service to our customers. And as always with change, there could be some hiccups. So Monday was our first day in the new system, and we're starting to get our, what do they call it, land legs, sea legs. We're starting to feel better about it, but we still have some adjustments to make. So please be patient with the service desk, or at least the Apple team. And as always, send us feedback. I know one of the feedbacks I've I personally have been working on is the email templates in the new system are rather horrendous, and we're working to improve those. Let's see. I wanted to mention Microsoft updates. Ross, you should explain this. We're making some changes in how we update Microsoft products on macOS.
Yeah, for a while we've been leveraging our MDM's built-in Microsoft updater functionality, and we've decided that we're going to make some changes here. Over the years, Microsoft has actually done a solid job of improving auto update. It used to be a little bit more invasive, and it could be abrupt with users and saying like, you need to restart your app immediately, stop everything you're doing, and we need to install this for you. But that's gotten much improved. And so we're going to be changing the way that we handle updates, and we're leveraging Microsoft CDN. We're leveraging their deployment mechanisms for it, which should help updates run smoothly in the background. It allows us to make some minor changes to how the updates are applied to make sure that it plays as nicely as possible with endpoint protection software, which is a great win. And it also is going to give us a nice window where we can say, all right, you've got a week. A week after your Mac detects that there's an update available for a Microsoft app, it's going to try to install it by itself, as long as that app is closed. And if needs be, it'll let the user know, hey, you've got to, quit out of this application. And it's going to give you a week to go through that process before it's like, no, seriously, we really need you to close Outlook. I know you never close Outlook, but you kind of have to. And that's going to make sure that we can always confirm these apps are up to date. We're using a very, very reliable and known deployment methodology for it. And we have a way of enforcing it, again, with that 7 days sort of leeway built in, that's not so abrupt that it's disruptive, but that prevents a situation from occurring where a user really does keep Outlook open for 30, 40 days at a time and gets out of compliance, and they sort of break out of that update cadence. So we think that this is going to be a great balance. 90% of users will notice no change because stuff will just update in the background, especially if you close your apps with any sort of regularity. So that won't be much of a big deal. But if you are keeping your apps open so long that the update process can't take care of itself, you're going to get some built-in prompts from your Microsoft apps letting you know it's really time. We've got to do this for you.
Yeah. And I would say we're always looking for better ways to apply updates. And a lot of times, we stopped using the Microsoft Updater years ago. And in fact, the solutions we have been using recently were built specifically because Microsoft did not have a good solution. So now that Microsoft has redeemed themselves and fixed that, we're going back to the Microsoft way of doing things. And anytime we can use native updates, whether it's Mac native updates when it's working, we just complained about theirs not working, or Microsoft updates, that's the way to go. But this stuff is constantly changing and in flux, and we may find reasons to change it again. Ideally, our clients don't need to worry about it. Our goal is to help them stay up to date. And, Ross, we've been in this business for quite a while. Staying up to date used to be kind of something you didn't necessarily have to do. It was like, well, I don't need those features. It's working. I'm fine. I'm not going to apply these updates. But that has really shifted with the rise in security and security breaches. And what we're seeing is many of these updates, although they can come with feature improvements and bug fixes, they also almost always these days include security patches and security fixes. So that's why it's so important to apply these updates today. As always, if you have any questions about applying updates or assistance doing so, please reach out to us. Let's see. Okay, let's get into it. ZeroTouch is the only way. And the reason I wanted to talk kind of a deep dive about ZeroTouch is this is a question I get a lot, which is what do I need to do to initiate ZeroTouch? And I often get these from clients who already have ZeroTouch, like we've already implemented it. And it is a weird concept. Once you've set it up, we naturally just want to do something, whether it's click a box, make a request. Like the question it always is, well, how do I trigger zero touch? And let's talk through that, because the beauty is really that once it's set up, and there's a lot of effort that goes into setting it up, but it's totally worth it. Once it's set up, you really don't need to do anything unless something's not working as expected. And then you either need to react to that or plan for the next zero touch deployment to fix that and hopefully go smoother. So, the process is not completely seamless or foolproof. There are things that can break along the way. And that's what I want to kind of talk about. So this is the overall concept. You've seen this before. I've shared it, I've talked about it. I want to break it down step by step. The first is where you purchase. This is super critical, because the only way zero touch will ever work is if when you purchase, Apple knows that you are authorized to make that purchase in the zero touch workflow. Meaning, if I just go to any random Best Buy and buy a Mac, there's no way that Apple will know that I'm part of the zero touch workflow, or that I'm part of an organization as part of the zero touch workflow. Now, if I were to go to Best Buy ahead of time and build a relationship with them through their business team and say, we are going to do the zero touch workflow, do you support this? I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe Best Buy is authorized to resell Apple products and can participate in the zero touch workflow. But you have to form that agreement ahead of time, and you have to link Best Buy's unique reseller ID into your unique Apple Business Manager, which is the next step, Apple Business Manager. So where you buy has to be linked to your Apple Business Manager. And the types of examples of stores that can be linked, Best Buy is one of them. B&H Photo is one. AT&T and Verizon, any of the mobile iPhone and iPad resellers, you can link to your Apple Business Manager account. And you can have multiple places that you purchase. You can have all of those linked to your Apple Business Manager account. Once again, you don't, even though you've linked them, doesn't mean you can just go to any random store and buy a computer and they will know that it's you. You have to go through their process. And that's why we often push Apple's process, which is the e-commerce store, the Apple custom store, custom Apple store. Unfortunately, it has a few different names, but it resides at ecommerce.apple.com. And Apple struggled with this in the beginning. They did not have it nailed down perfectly for many years, but today it works 100%. I'm going to say 100% of the time, Ross. I don't know if that's safe for me to say, but I'm going to say if you buy from ecommerce.com, ecommerce.apple.com, your custom Apple store, and it's already linked to your Apple Business Manager account, then that first step will work. Where it doesn't always work is if you buy outside of that process and whoever you bought it from doesn't do what needs to be done to make that handoff work. And I must be honest with you, I don't know what that process is exactly. And everyone seems to have a different excuse of why it didn't happen. But my understanding is if you buy anywhere else, anywhere other than the online store, even if you buy from an Apple retail store, and Apple retail won't like me saying this, but if you buy from them and they don't push the quote through your custom store, be careful, keep on them, make sure that they attach that purchase to your business manager account. So it sounds like, hey, Ben, you just scared me. It sounds like a lot of options, a lot of things could go wrong. Well, there is one known method that will work every single time. And then there are a ton of other options that could also work. I just haven't seen them work consistently. Not to say they can't. I mean, CDW is another one here in the Chicago area. And if you have a good rep at CDW, I'm sure they can make it work, every time. And you could buy your iPhones from AT&T, you could buy your Macs from Apple. They could both be connected to your Apple Business Manager account. But the key part is they have to be pre-connected. Those agreements have to be in place, and you have to buy through that procurement process the same way every time. And that's where I have seen some people get into trouble. They're like, hey, we're in zero touch, it's working great. And then one day, an employee or owner goes maybe to an Apple store on the weekend, buys a computer, and then they're like, hey, my computer didn't auto enroll. Why is that? Well, because you bought from Apple, but you didn't tell them you had a business store, or you told them, but let's be honest, the people who work on the weekends, they're not the same people that work on the business team during the weekdays. So maybe they didn't understand the process, and maybe it didn't happen. So does that make sense? Did I miss anything? Are there any questions before I move on?
A quick disclaimer, I think, on all of this too, is that just remember that how this goes. We acknowledge emergencies come up. It's if you're looking for, especially for any kind of customized, like 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro, shipping times can be large, right? And sometimes you just need to get new hardware in your hands. There are always ways to adapt and sort of figure things out. If you do have access or proximity to a retail store, being able to work with them and with whoever's available on or from the business team to get them to connect that to your existing business account, feasible. Do what you can. We'll be there to assist. But in general, like, yes, given how supply chain shenanigans have been for the past couple years, it's not a terrible idea to be proactive about having spare hardware on hand. Just knowing that sometimes shipping times can be 4 to 6 weeks. Every time Apple launches new gear, the delivery time tends to get pretty large as people get really excited and really hit those pre-orders. And so given market volatility, I do recommend try and stay ahead of that as much as possible if you can. And then if an emergency does arise, which of course it always can, then do what you can to work with your known vendors if they're connected, or work with Apple Business locally to try to get it in.
Yeah, it's a good point, Ross. We just helped the client order a bunch of computers, and they got a couple extra to have on hand so that if they need one very quickly, they don't have to wait for a new computer to ship. They can just pull that out, buy another one to replace it, but they'll have one on hand. I wanted to show everyone the e-commerce store, because if you don't have one, the other benefit of the e-commerce store is we can help you build these recommended systems. These are 2 in a store that we have. And, that's a shortcut to buying a computer with AppleCare with the specs that you've already determined that your company uses or needs. You can also put together bundles, accessory bundles, whether it's keyboard, mice, adapters, and you can have, I think, up to 6 recommended systems. So if you don't have those, or you need those, or you need help with those, let us know. But yes, if I were to buy one of these, when it arrives, it's automatically connected to our Apple Business Manager. And the nice thing about this is you can verify before you unbox the computer. You can go into Business Manager and see if those new devices are there in the system. And if they're not there, ZeroTouch is not going to work. Now, as Ross mentioned, if ZeroTouch doesn't work for any reason, there are ways to recover from that. We can always manually enroll a device like we've done for years. So it's not a complete loss. It's just, if you're expecting ZeroTouch to work, you've got to do it this way. So I buy here, the device gets attached to my Apple Business Manager account, typically within a few days or a week after I purchase, but definitely before it arrives. It should show up before it arrives. And if it doesn't, you could say, I'm not going to unbox until I get this resolved. Because once you unbox, that's the one and only opportunity to really have that zero touch experience. So when the device arrives, what happens is you ask the user to unbox. And the nice thing about this is you can buy online and ship it, anywhere in the country. There are caveats about shipping anywhere in the world. If you need to do that, talk to us about it. But we just had a client who ordered, 20 different computers, and they wanted them shipped 20 different locations. This interface does not work well for that. ECommerce.com does not work unless you buy them 20 different 20 different times, which is kind of tedious. That's why I recommend talking to your local Apple retail store. We can also help you if you don't know who that is, help you determine who that is. They can help with different shipping addresses, and then they can post the proposals here or the quotes here for you to simply hit the buy button. So then you get the benefit of extra service from the Apple stores, but you also ensure that you're going to use ZeroTouch because you're buying through e-commerce. So once the machine arrives, Ross, we know it's super critical. One thing has to happen in order for this all to work. You know, it's not a quiz, but I'm pretty sure you know what this is. This one thing during the unboxing. What do you think that is?
Oh, geez. As you got to make sure the device is online.
Yes, that's it. So you've got to make sure, and anyone who's unboxed any Apple device these days knows that the computer needs to be online. And iPhones and iPads with cellular service, they're going to do that naturally and easily. But Macs, we don't have the option for cellular service on Macs today, do we? I wonder if that we'll ever have that. Will we ever need that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that means the Mac has to be either connected to Ethernet, which is probably not what people are doing today, especially work from home, which means that they got to get it on the Wi-Fi. And Apple will prompt you and try to encourage you to connect to Wi-Fi. But it always surprises me, maybe it shouldn't, but it still surprises me how many people don't know their Wi-Fi password. Probably because they haven't had a computer in several years. They haven't had to connect it. It just works. And here they are with a new device. You know, Apple's even done us a favor with that, because a lot of times it will, if your phone is on the Wi-Fi, it'll say, and it will prompt you to share the passcode with the device. Have you seen that, Ross?
Yeah, that is a wonderful feature. It's great when you have people over and they're.
Yeah, that's really nice. Did we lose you, Ross? You look frozen. No, you're back. Okay. Great. Yeah, no, that's a really cool feature. Yes, if they're in your contact address book, you will be prompted to share the Wi-Fi passcode. They won't actually see it, which is also a nice security feature. But when you're unboxing, the computer has to get on your internet. And that's where we see some people stumble. They're like, oh, I'll do that later. Well, if you do that later, it's not going to have the opportunity to have the zero-touch conversation. And it's not going to have it later without some forcing. So it's not going to be zero-touch. It's going to be somebody's going to have to get in there and help. So that's one of the things to be aware of. And once again, if the employee does not get it on the internet and misses that opportunity, that's okay. We can recover from it. It's just not as smooth and cool as a full zero-touch experience. So they need to unbox it, connect it to their internet. The device then talks to, in our case, our mobile device management server, which has to also, in advance, be connected to your Apple Business Manager. That's part of the setup process. And as soon as it does that, it starts getting instructions. Ross, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Apps and security policies.
Yeah, real quick, as we're tight on time here. But what happens is your device gets online. It asks Apple if anybody owns it. Apple takes a look at Apple Business Manager account, says, yes, these people do. This is your owner. It'll tell the user, great, this device is owned by company XYZ, hit continue. Let's get you set up. It'll then go through a process of enrolling with the MDM. Historically speaking, we would do this by sending out a link to a user. They have to click on it. You know, it'd have to be an administrator and then approve the profile. Zero-touch means we do all that automatically as long as you're online and the device knows who owns it. As soon as that happens, we start immediately acting upon the machine, and this is all automated. And this can be if there's software that you want pre-installed on your computer, great, it's going to start trying to do that. But probably more importantly, it also is going to start applying settings, and especially in a lot of corporate environments and intranet environments that can include security settings. And so if you've got necessary firewall settings that need to be applied to your device, if you've got 802.1x settings that need to be applied to your device right out of the box for it to be compliant on an internal network, these are some of the things that we can have configured to just fly onto that computer as soon as it knows who owns it, the very first time it's online. And by getting those in place right off the bat, that means that you have the smallest time frame possible where there could be a non-compliant device on an internal network, which is good for everybody. Once it pulls the software and that settings, it'll then allow you to proceed to user account creation while the rest of this is sort of churning around in the background. So it can use that time that you're still working to continue downloading and installing larger packages.
Yeah. So as soon as it gets that connection, it starts installing the apps that we predetermined must be installed. So if there are apps that you would like to see your organization get, please talk to us so we can make sure it is part of your zero-touch deployment. Or an alternative is to make it available in self-service or Mac Manage. So we have several free apps. Well, I'm only showing one, but I know we have a catalog of several free apps we can install.
Yeah, those mostly live in general these days.
Oh, general. Okay, thank you. So under general, yeah, Box, Adobe Reader, so your employees have the option to go here and install these, whether they're an admin or not. If this is in your library, they can go to Mac Manage and do this. But we can also auto install some apps. And as Ross mentioned, security policies, encryption, 802.1x, any of those items, get those installed right away, and really have all the things that we used to do by hand, and it was very tedious, and we had checklists, all these things we can automate, and it's an iterative process. So this technology changes very quickly. So if you're missing something in your organization, please talk to us so that we can get it tested and implemented for your next zero-touch deployment. The other thing I've heard, people kind of get stuck on this. They're like, well, if I unbox and the apps aren't there yet, I have to wait for the apps to install. I don't have time for that. I've heard people say this. I don't have time for that. And I try to politely push back and say, well, it's going to take time, whether you do them by hand or automatically. It's going to take time to install those apps. And in fact, it's almost always going to be faster through automation. I have yet to see anyone manually install an app faster than automation. So it will depend on the internet speed of your location. But most of the time, you can open up a web browser, log into your email, and start doing account creation, two-factor setup, email or password changes, all the things that are going to happen regardless of how these apps get installed. And while you're doing that, the apps are installing in the background. And for the most part, by the time you're done setting, activating your accounts, you can then switch to desktop apps. So start in the web browser, log into your email, activate your accounts, and then you can switch to the desktop apps. And for a lot of us, that means Microsoft Office, the Microsoft Office suite. One of the things, zero-touch. One of the things I wanted to touch on is there's an additional optional feature where you can connect your Macs to either Office 365 or Google for authentication. And one of the nice things about this is a Mac right out of the box will create an account on the fly. So no longer do we have to, create an account and change it later or make adjustments to it. You can give someone a new computer, they can unbox it, they can put in their Office 365 email and password, it will create an account and log them in, or Google. So that's a really nice streamlined feature that I want to see more of our clients take advantage of. But that is also a step that has to be configured and tested ahead of time. And there's a transition process to get your existing fleet of computers to that method, which is a little more difficult than just a brand new computer. All this stuff is easier on a brand new computer because it's a clean slate. Like, let's just get this laid down. This is how it works, and it works really well. So we want to help people get there. And then the last part is, between self-service, between support menu and self-service, which we just talked about. Those are really kind of the missing pieces. Maybe you have a special app that only a couple people in your team use. Instead of putting that app on all your computers, just put them in Mac Manage, and they can go there and get them. And so what this means at the end of the day is zero touch means IT is not physically touching the device. We're doing a lot of work on the back end. We're working together with the client to prep and make sure this works, and we're iterating and making it better with over the years or months or years, but we're not physically touching the computer. So if you're still getting the computer, whether internally in your organization or even shipping it to us somewhere to be configured and then packaged back up and given to the employee, let's stop doing that. Let's get you on ZeroTouch. And the last thing I have a slide on, and yeah, we went a little over, is even though managed Apple IDs, there's a use case for managed Apple IDs. We've talked about that in previous webinars. When you use ZeroTouch, if you also leverage apps and books, you really don't need Apple IDs. And so I kind of like that feature as well. Like, let's simplify it even further so employees don't need to worry about entering Apple ID credentials to apply app store updates, especially Keynote, Numbers, Pages. Even if you don't use those apps, guess what? Apple ships them on a computer and you will get prompted to update those and patch them. So we can make that go away through this ZeroTouch workflow. I think that's it, Ross. Anything else we want to mention for, I guess I have one more thing. There is a, why are my links not working? Apple does have a video. It's a developer video, so it's a little technical, but they talk about their own use of ZeroTouch in Apple's corporate environment. So if you work for Apple, they use ZeroTouch, and they talk about it here. 17-minute video. I think it's well worth watching just to understand the concepts that they use within their own organization, multinational organization, and how you can apply those same concepts to your business. Okay, now I'll ask you one more time. Anything else I should mention, Ross?
No, I think we should wrap. I think that's it's a good place to sort of give you an overview.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And next month, June, I can't believe June sounds like summer. Can't wait for it to get here because it doesn't feel like summer yet in Chicago. We're going to talk about self-service tools and kind of that last piece we touched on. You've got the ZeroTouch, you've got the computer in the hands of the employee. Well, they may want to do some things, and how can you enable them to do that? Let's do that through self-service. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the week. Talk to you next month. Bye.
Take care.